Good evening, I'm Jeff Vaughn.
And I'm Lena Wynn. We begin with campaign 2016, where after last Tuesday's primary results, things are falling into place.
And the next president of the United States, Ted Cruz.
Now, she nailed the announcement, but then Carly Fiorina took a tumble off the stage at a rally last night in Lafayette, Indiana.
It took Ted Cruz's running mate about 13 seconds before she was able to get back up. It doesn't appear that the Texas senator even realized that she had fallen, but his wife did and tried helping her up. We're told Fiorina missed a step but was not hurt.
Well, meantime, Ted Cruz and John Kasich want to trip up Donald Trump ahead of tomorrow's important Indiana primary.
And a poll shows a tighter race than expected among the Democrats.
Yeah, so KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan joins us now as we count down to the Indiana primary and 24 hours away or less.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Indiana could have an impact on what happens here in the Republican primary coming up as well. A new NBC news poll tonight shows Donald Trump is pulling away from Ted Cruz in Indiana, up by 15 points. And that could be a fatal blow to Cruz's strategy to block Trump from clinching the nomination. All this on primary eve in Indiana.
If we win in Indiana, it's over with, folks. It's over with. And then we focus on Hillary Clinton.
A jubilant Donald Trump told a pumped-up crowd of supporters at his last rally before the Indiana primary on Tuesday that a convincing win there will push him to the verge of winning the Republican nomination. Trump, portraying himself as a defender of gun rights, declared that more guns would have prevented some recent terrorist attacks, including the slaughter in San Bernardino.
If you had guns on the other side, whether it's Paris or San Bernardino or some of the military people that were killed, where you have gun-free zones, would have been a whole different story. Would have been a whole different story, folks. And in fact, it may never have even happened, because if these people found out, if they found out that there were guns in the room, they probably wouldn't have even gone there, okay?
The entire country, the eyes of the nation, are on Indiana. Indiana faces a choice, and it's a choice not just for the state, not just for the Republican Party, but for the entire country.
Senator Ted Cruz is fighting for his political life in Indiana. A crushing loss there would nearly guarantee Trump wins the nomination. At his final primary eve rally in Indianapolis, Cruz even ripped Trump for not rejecting the endorsement last October of former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson.
Donald Trump is trumpeting the support he received from Mike Tyson, a convicted rapist who spent 3 years in prison here in Indiana for raping a 17-year-old girl. Now, what did Donald Trump say? He said Mike Tyson is, in his own words, a, quote, tough guy.
But Cruz ran into a group of Trump supporters and did not appear to succeed in converting them.
I'm running to be everyone's president. Those who vote for me, even those
we don't want you.
Well, you're entitled to your view, sir, and I will respect it. In fact, I will
do the
protect. I will protect
you ask
your
cases
rights.
to drop out, it's your turn.
Well,
take your own words.
Now I'm curious, sir.
Time to drop out.
When
sir.
Donald doesn't get to 1237, you're going to call him to drop out?
Donald's definitely going to get to 1237. No, he's going to get more than 1237.
That's a total lie made up by Donald Trump's campaign.
Even worse for Cruz, Indiana, with 57 delegates, is the biggest stop left on the way to California. And recent polls indicate Trump, who's closing in on the 1,237 delegates he needs to clinch the nomination, is leading by double digits now in Indiana. Trump campaign officials believe it could crush Cruz. In Kentucky, which holds its Democratic primary in 2 weeks, Hillary Clinton announced she would assign her husband to create jobs in states that have been hard hit by the loss of mining and manufacturing.
I've told my husband he's got to come out of retirement and be in charge of this because, you know, he's got more ideas a minute than anybody I know.
Just the day before, former President Bill Clinton was greeted with cheers mixed with boos in West Virginia from Appalachian voters who are angry about the declining coal industry and loss of jobs. The polls in that state indicate Bernie Sanders will do well in West Virginia, and he's now urging Democratic superdelegates to rethink their support for Hillary Clinton, since he argues the polls indicate he would do better against Donald Trump than she would. And buoyed by some of those recent polls in West Virginia and some other states, including Indiana, where he's running close to Clinton or even with her, Bernie Sanders is now talking about a contested convention maybe for Democrats. But he would have to convince a lot of those superdelegates to jump ship to pull that off. And that's not real likely.
Right.
Let's face it, that's not going to happen.
Of course, a lot of us here on June 7th, we want the California primary to mean something.
Oh, yeah.
If Trump wins big tomorrow in Indiana, does it lessen California?
I think it would. If he wins the 50 or so delegates, it would mean the pressure is off Trump, who tonight is still nearly 250 delegates shy of clinching the nomination. If he wins 50 or more delegates in Indiana, which his campaign believes will happen, Trump would need fewer than 200 delegates after that to wrap up the nomination, and there would still be nearly 450 up for grabs in the 9 remaining states, including more than 170 here in California. He wouldn't be able to officially close it out before the June 7th California primary, so we'd still have a contested primary, but barring a Trump catastrophe of some kind, he would clear that 1237 probably in California on primary night, and perhaps by a wide margin, Lena.
All right, Dave, thank you.